Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So finally, we shall conduct the third episode of the series that is aimed not to summarize everything that we know about the nanobots that I call Neros, because as I said, we are now already at a stage where it's just impossible, even in 3 hours, like to summarize all the evidence and all the theories. It's just too much. I mean, but what I'm trying to do is to at least summarize the important aspects that are related to the issue that I'm working like very, that is now I'm occupied with it very strongly, which is the issue of how to use the electrolysis chamber, which is the main like productive container that I use, in a better way. I would say this is the practical question. For some time, I've dealt with a related practical question, which is, how to replicate the Neros, how to tell them to replicate, to clone themselves. And I think, I'm almost certain that I know like how to do it. That I've done it actually. We've seen so many of them that it's almost certain by now. But yes, we need to put them to the test, and we will do it in several ways. I will discuss it. But still, and it's great. I think it's great. But we still need to perfect this process, and for that we need to solve many practical issues that are related to matter and energy. Of course, these are very broad subjects, but I will. I've discussed it in the last 2 videos of this series. Of I call it like guns, steel, and boats, and I will continue now. I feel the need, the urge to put a disclaimer here. Maybe it's not really needed, but anyway, that as you understand, I try to be as scientific as possible, even though I many times I mix like positivistics, pieces of evidence with like mythology, things that are more related to mythology, to prophecy, to religion, to my own background, and to my view of the world. But on top of all that, we deal with things that certainly and manifestedly outside the realm of like established science. But nevertheless, I try to be as scientific as possible. As I said many times, maybe if those of you that follow me, I like to think of myself. And this was actually, I've said it like long before I started the experimentation with the microscope and the Neros. It was actually, when I first said it, it was with regards to like my inquiry of the world, like of the society and the intelligence services and the issue of the foreigners. It wasn't like I didn't do any like natural science there. But what I've said then is it still holds. I see myself like the model that I see for myself is like I try to be like Van Helsing, like Professor Van Helsing, specifically from the Dracula story, but specifically the version of Anthony Hopkins in the Francis Ford Coppola movie, which is it's not an excellent movie, but it's a pretty good movie. And like I try to model myself on him, which means that it's like it's like a person that he's right. He's like he stands on 3 legs. Like he has 3 legs. Like first leg is he's the natural science. Like he's like a medicine doctor. I'm not a doctor, but he tries to be scientific. Like with of course, using knowledge of the end of the 19th century, where the original Dracula story takes place. But still, he's like deal with the hardcore science stuff, like blood transfusions and like diseases and things that are hardcore science, and like he tries to be very, very rational and very skeptic and like do everything very or perhaps another like another very known fictional character of the exact same time is Sherlock Holmes, which is also kind of like a modern hero. And he's also very rational, like very empirically oriented, and he's not a doctor at all. He's like a detective, but I mean, he tries to conduct his investigation in a very scientific, like very rigorous way, like a scientist of its own kind. But there is also balancing. But balancing can also, when these kind of natural sciences are not enough, he can also use the second leg, which is more like, what is very common today today is actually very, very common in many like police like crime series, television series. It's something that has become extremely popular in the last 20 years or so, which is to use psychology and like profiling and psychological analysis, sometimes to a ridiculous extent, but nevertheless, it's very popular in this day to think like the police detective is less of like a Sherlock Holmes hero, but more like some kind of like a folk psychologist. Like, I mean, to try to analyze society and like people according to sociological and psychological methods. And this is always important. And this is also something that balancing can do and sometimes do. And when these two are not enough, I mean, he can also do voodoo. I mean, that's also like, I mean, when it is with very like serious opponents like Dracula, when like, I mean, science is not enough and psychology is not enough, so yeah, voodoo is also, I mean, part of the like, it's also on in his toolbox, like it's on the table as well. So yeah, I mean, I do all the three, but I try to be scientific, but there is a huge problem is that, I mean, in order to be scientific, you need to rely on evidence, and I have very limited means to gather evidence, and this will also always be remembered. Many things that I say are many theories that I judge as like, I mean, substantial or non substantial. I do it based on my experiments that I conduct. And of course, I mean, there is also the issue of how well I analyze the experiments, like the results. I can interpret it completely wrong, and I lack a lot of knowledge in science. I'm not a scientist at all. Like, my only academic background, which is like in the natural sciences, is actually in computer sciences, which are probably the least like relevant from all natural sciences, because it's much more. I mean, it's much more much closer to mathematics, which is like completely abstract, and I mean, it has no implication in the like natural world. Even though eventually we deal with computers. So I mean, yeah, maybe in the future, I don't know if it's like a year from now or 100 years from now or a month from now, but probably in the future, if, and I don't see a reason why not, I will continue to conduct such experiments and gather more knowledge. I mean, I will certainly reach to a level of that I can actually start to analyze what I see from the computer science perspective, and maybe then it will be helpful that I have like both academic and like professional background with computer sciences. But we are far from that point yet. I mean, in order to reach there, I mean, it's not that, I mean, by accident. I mean, computer science is a new science. Like, I mean, because you need to get there, you need, I mean, a lot of like to establish a lot of other things. I mean, before you actually get there. But there is a huge problem that I am in a house arrest since December, and I have very limited tools to actually observe reality. I have the microscope, which is extremely important, but I don't have many tools. Like, I even lack basic. I mean, the only electronic equipment is things that I salvage from the garbage and I just disassemble. And perhaps I need to actually study. I mean, I can actually do it even more than I do now. I mean, if I have like the mental energy, I will actually put more time to watch YouTube movies of how you can disassemble like electronic like garbage that people throw away, because there, I mean, you can actually find like in the street and like in the vicinity of the hostel all sort of like garbage electronic stuff, and I mean, yeah, you can disassemble it. And I mean, if you know what you're doing, and I do not know what I do, but if you know what you're doing, you can actually, I mean, get, I mean, a lot of like free electric gadgets that can be very helpful. And I do it with speakers. Actually, I've done it today with a new speaker. Might be helpful for the carousel. Maybe I'll do something like that. This is one big magnet. It could be put here, and there is another magnet here with the two connected the two rods. I mean, the two electrical like wire already connected, and this could be put here. And then we need to spin it to spin it, the carousel, and with some luck, we might be able to use the rods actually to create electrolysis that is not moving, because I've told you that there is the issue of like, can electrolysis be conducted when the whole container is moving all the time? But if the electricity is actually created inside the container and the electrolysis takes place inside the container, perhaps it's kind of like a way to, from the point of view of the Neros, it will not be moving like the electrolysis rods, because it will also be relative to them in the same place. So yeah, you can salvage also from garbage, and this is nice actually. Yeah, probably later today we'll fix it with all the screws and all the plastics, and we'll put it to the test. It's going to be interesting. Although this also, solve the issue of like how to seal, because I need to seal all those windows. But here we have a pretty closed compartment which could be used without with lack or spillage issues. Anyway, yes, so I have a very limited means of actually like gather like results, and this is a huge, like, it squeezed my results. And so my theories are obviously biased, to what is at my hand, which is very basic, but that's what I can do. I do what I can, and it's all very disturbing, and I wish I had like more money, and I was not in a house arrest, that I can move. I could buy even basic stuff that could have been really helpful, even like extremely basic like Arduino gadgets or electricity gadgets like voltmeter, ampermeter could have been so helpful, and they cost nothing, but I have nothing. So, and I felt like that I need to mention it now, because several things that we'll discuss now will be should be taken with more than a grain of salt, because they rely specifically on experiments that were held with very limited tools to actually like observe reality, and I'm aware of that. And this sometimes it's more like relevant. The effect is bigger than like other, and I think that with regard to what we'll speak about now, it's very important, because if I had like much better lab experiments, perhaps several things that I'm going, conclusions were completely like different. Okay, so last time we finished with a conundrum, a conflict, because as I said, I understood that my P and my semen are not actually, after several, it took me some time and experiments, they are not good mediums to preserve the Neros at all. Even when I add all sorts of like other materials, they're not, it's better to the best preservation is like to put them like in a dark oil, like black thick oil is probably like I haven't tried to do it with how do you say, like oil, like neft, like crude oil, because it's disgusting, and then where can you get it? But I guess that this will be the best actually, because it's dark and like it's very crude and like and thick, and this is like the thicker the material, the better they preserve. And I've seen it doing many like experiments that just leave them like to like in jars like for like weeks and even months. So I check it later, and I see that yes, the thicker the medium, the better they preserve. But on the other hand, there is a problem here, because these materials are not conductive. Now, perhaps there is some kind of a oil which is conductive actually, and we don't really need. Not always we need actually to use. It's best. It was definitely best to use like oil, but perhaps things like silan, which I've already also used, that can also be like kind of like something in the middle, but it's not. It's a problem. It's mostly sugar and not fat, and like the dates mixture. So it's thicker. It's much thicker than like water-based solutions, 100% dates. But then there's a problem, a much bigger problem of contamination with germs, because germs like it very much, and 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 it's also not that conductive. I mean, and the issue of conductivity is a serious issue, because I mostly use electrolysis as my main way to energize the neurons, and perhaps it will not always be the case. But until now, I haven't found a better, and I've tried, but I didn't find a better way. And it's not, it's not the trivial way, like how to like get electrical energy, but that's the way that it works. And I didn't find like a better way until now. I hope that I will. Like, and I'm also, I'm trying to also experiment with magnetism, then perhaps it will be something that will help the electrolysis, and maybe it already is, and you've seen it with your own eyes, but maybe it even can be like, a replacement for it. But still, I haven't successfully done, find any replacement for this method. And oil is not conductive. Now, maybe there are conductive like oil-like materials that I need to think of better. I'm not that expert in materials, and although even if I was, I have very limited means. So it's going to be a problem to get, at least currently, to get like very kind of like exotic materials. But maybe there is something that is like both oily and also very conductive, and that I can buy. If I had money, or get somehow. But the issue is even more complicated than that, because it's not certain at all that that we even need a very conductive material. Because as we've seen in the experiment yesterday or the day before, that if it's too conductive, it starts to burn actually. And this could be attributed to not specifically the work of the neurons themselves, because my assumption is that they do not generate heat, or at least not in a significant way when they work. But but there is also the issue of the mixture. Like, what is the mixture? The rods, the metallic rods that are eroding and generate heat, and also the other like stuff in the mixture which are not super conductive, and they are conductive, but if a lot of electricity is like if a strong current flows through the medium, it's inevitably everything gets heated here, and this is not good for us, because it burns very, very quickly. You get to the point that it burns. Now, I would say that for several months, like one of mistakes that I understand that it's like a mistake, but I've done it anyway. But it is to use mixtures that are with too many like stuff on it. Like, I've used like many kind of mixture for both for preservation and for the electrolysis. That I've placed so much stuff, like different materials, and it was all like so many like dirty puddings. And because I didn't know because I tried a lot of stuff, because I needed to try things like all sorts of stuff, and it was obvious to me very quickly, and now more than ever, that the ideal mixture, and I still don't know what the ideal mixture, but the ideal mixture is probably something that is pretty smooth and doesn't contain a lot of material. That it's not like a magical potion with 20 ingredients. It's almost certainly it's something that is basic. Like, not many, but basic. But you need to find out what are the ingredients. Even if it's like only 4 or 5, it's still there are many possibilities of 4 and 5. Endless possibilities. But I understand that it should be for like something that is pretty smooth, like without lumps, and probably something that is like with preparation in like pre-prepared, maybe pre-cooked. Without the nero, because you don't want to something pre-cooked, and then the nero will be added, and it should be probably something that is like light and like at least translucent. At least semi-transparent, so light will be able to pass through it. and it should be like, I mean, uniform and thick, and very thick, very solid, almost solid, and also conductive, but not too conductive. The idea is that the neurons, I mean, themselves should be those that like close the circle and like create, I mean, the superconductive circle. The mixture shouldn't be too conductive, because then, I mean, what's happened is that it just burns. Now, part of the problem is that I have very weak power sources. I rely on direct current, which is always the case with electrolysis, and of course, I mean, so I have transformers, I mean, with various like volts, and actually I have pretty strong one that I found, like that I salvaged from the trash, from like I disassembled it from like some kind of appliance, and which is like maybe 30 volts or something like that, which is pretty strong for transformer, but it's still very weak. Like I mean 30 volts are not that much. And maybe if I had very, very strong DC power source, like incredibly strong power source of DC, or not incredibly strong, just like industrial scale power source, I mean, it was much easier for me to actually use mixture that are not that conductive. I mean, at least initially, like with very high voltage, and like let the neurons like create the circuits themselves, and when they actually do, I mean, and you can see it, like as we've seen it, because suddenly, I mean, you see the, I mean, it's, I mean, you can see when, I mean, when suddenly, I mean, the mixture is much more conductive. You can see it with your own eyes, like, I mean, you've seen it yourself, like with that, I mean, eventually, I mean, it just happened, I mean, because, I mean, if you have enough neurons, and I mean, and the circle is I mean, is, and the like, and there is not too much material between the two rods. You need the rods to be like relatively close, and without that much material, but they will create the circuits, and it will be like much more conductive. And then, I mean, presumably you could actually lower like the volts of this theoretical industrial like power source. Because I mean, if the potential difference will be high enough, I mean, or the volts will be potentially high enough, I mean, even not that conductive material will allow some like electricity to pass. But I mean, this is all theoretical, because what I have is just, I mean, home like transformers, and we need to do with that. Now I would say that the neurons can work in oil and in like a very solid or thick material. This was demonstrated many times, and they can do it. I mean, I don't know how they do it, but they can do it. It's not like I mean, like that they need the liquid in order to move, or I mean, or something like that. Not at all. They move inside solids. I mean, I don't know what kind of solid. Maybe they can't do it like through metal. I don't know. Maybe they can. Maybe they can do it. Or like maybe they can like pass through metal. It's not like something. It's not impossible, and we shouldn't consider it impossible because it sounds like incredible, because they can do amazing stuff. But I mean, they can certainly work in very solid materials that are not metals, like, for example, first of all, beeswax, silicon, like polymer, I mean, like MS polymer, modified silicon polymer, which you get, I mean, when it's like out of the tube, it becomes pretty, I mean, so almost like rock solid, and they can work in it. And this was, it's been recorded in this channel, like things that they've done inside like very solid silicon polymer. Actually, I mean, it's very nice because it's, it's both very, very hard, but it also allows, it's translucent. It allows light to pass through it, so you can actually watch amazing stuff that they did like on, and so you can cut it very thinly and put it like on the slide, and I've done it, and then take the video, and you can see amazing stuff. Maybe I will do more like such thing with silicon, even though I almost totally ran out of it. Like I have just a little bit of it, but little bit could be enough to see what nice things, like sculptures and like also like artistic creations of the Neros. Also life forms, with more or less alive, like in different, like it's like in The Princess Bride, he's not dead, he's mostly dead. So it's the same with the microbes that they can create. Like they can create mostly dead microbes in silicon, but maybe they are not entirely dead. We need to figure that out. Yeah, you're all dead. Yes. No, I don't care. So I wish it was just a joke. I wish it was a joke, but it's not. Most certainly they created like tons of like microbes from silicon that that are swarming there right now. But who cares? So it's just true. It's not a joke. Anyway, just like that. So anyway, silicon is great, and it's almost pretty much transparent, and they worked in another material that should be mentioned is paint oil. If you remember, I've done several good experiments with paint oil because I actually I have paint oil because I paint with oil, and I also have like all sorts of containers that I've used to mix paint oil. Paint oil is you almost always. In arty there are no rules, but almost always you mix. You buy it. Today. Since the beginning of the 20th century or the end of the 19th century, when the tubes, the color tube was invented. Before that, people actually mixed the pigments themselves, and actually it was quite controversy in the art world when the tube was invented. Because many like artists said that now it's going to be too easy to actually mix the oil colors, and this will diminish the quality of the art, because like more people will actually start to paint with oil, which it was true, and it was like a lower barrier to enter the art world. And also they will not create their own colors. They can mix colors from tubes, but it's not the same level of preparation that you can do when you actually start with just the pigments, which is like a powder, and you need to work much harder to create your colors. And that's the way that it has been done since the 16th century. And it's tons of time was for any artist was put just in mixing the pigments with all sorts of material. It's funny because today actually many people totally. Many people that have artistic inclination and like to paint. They don't even touch oil colors at all, and they don't even bother to actually study or learn how to do it, and they found it repulsive, because, and it's actually not that popular as it were in the past, because because today even the process of mixing the color from the tubes, like the paste from the tubes, with other solvents, which is almost always needed. Many find it too much work and too much trouble. I can say that I myself, I really like this part. I can spend all nights, and I have spent all nights just mixing like colors, I mean, from tubes with all sorts of like solvents, and like I really like this part of the, I mean, of art. But I mean, and there are people like me as well. I mean, so these kind of people actually, I mean, tend to like painting with oil, and like I like it. But many find it like a lot. I mean, they just want to start painting, and then they don't understand why they need the whole like mix, like the whole chemistry sessions that can take many hours. Anyway, so that's why that's explanation why I had like in my mother's apartment. I had like many when I still painted. I mean, it was in my mother's apartment, so I had many like all sorts of containers with paint oils in various degrees of like drying, mixed with all sorts of like solvents. There is a liquid, which is the brand name, and linseed oil, and that means the turpentine, and there are also like brand like different oils and different solvents, chemical solvents that are used for to get all sorts of effects, like quick wine or drying or like gloss on the end. Or sometimes you want it to actually to have the retarded effect, which makes the drying even slower. So I mean, yeah. So I have had quite a bit of those. Like I mean, in various like levels of drying, and oil paint usually dries very slowly. Even when mixed with solvents that are aimed to make it quicker, it's still much like considerably slower than any other like form of art, like color that I know of, like considerably slower from acrylic, for example, which is also something that I'm also using acrylics for painting. So actually, it was found that the Neros actually work very nice inside like containers with various degrees of like of drying oil, paint oil, without electrolysis at all. I mean, just like I just put it like in the container. These were mostly like glass or plastic containers. So, and it was mostly like used. It was after I used the color, so it was only scraps were left, which was good because a lot of light passed through the walls. It wasn't like all color, and amazing stuff were created actually, even not microscopic, like in things that you can actually watch, like sculptures that are quite big. Without this it took several days or weeks even, but they worked very well in it. And it was established they can work very well in almost completely dry oil. So it's not that they do not need it like to be liquid in order to actually like pass through it and work through it. Moreover, they actually created living worms inside. If you remember, we had like the black oil and the white oil experiments, and the black oil like petri dish. I mean, I've used petri dish sometimes for the mixing, like glass petri dishes for mixing. So it actually contained living worms even. So we even created living worms inside the black paint oil with the solvents and like other materials that are placed there. But most of the medium was like very thick and in the various level. Now, typically, it doesn't dry like, all at once, the same, like, naturally, when it dries very slowly, the oil mixture, and so, typically, the layers that are more like, exposed to air are drier, but, beneath it, like, there is like a more of like it's a little bit more liquid. So they can, so it was demonstrated that they can create stuff both in the very liquid, like it's not very liquid, it's very crude anyway. It's much more crude than like kitchen oil, like canola oil or olive oil. It's much cruder than that, but it's not rock solid. So this was demonstrated they can create stuff both in like the rock solid oil and the crude with somehow liquid but still solid oil. Anyway, all this evidence was, more than enough to establish the fact that they don't, they can pass through stuff, like, and walk in it. So liquid is not really needed in order for them to actually work, like, but most of like, the conductive material that I can think of, and I can get my hands on like, all the time I was under house arrest, and still I'm under house arrest. So I need it like I can only use like things that I've already had like in my mother's apartment or now in the hostel, which is even less, or like things that are really cheap that perhaps like I can buy with ask my mother to buy or something like that. So I don't have a lot of like options for materials to choose from. But mostly when you want something to be conductive, you want it to be liquid. Of course I can use metal, but the problem is, and I've tried it with metal. The problem with metal is that it just passes through. The current just passes through the metal, and that's it's a short circuit, and you understand. We want, what we need is that it will not be a short circuit. It will be like that the material will have like the material will have a resistance, because otherwise it will be just like a wire. And if, you can connect like in serial another component, so it will not be like very short, like you will not get like a short circuit. This is short circuit, but it will, as far as the neurons, the neurons will not get. It will the electricity will not pass like through them. It will pass just through the metal. So the trick is to have like a mixture that is both like it has resistance, but it's also conductive. And it's like a game. Like you need to find the balance. Like what's the correct? And the correct. You need to find the correct level of like both how like liquid it should be, like and as compared to solid, and also how conductive it should be. And there are also other and of course this is these questions are also the answers to the questions are related to also how many neurons you have, because until now I always have very like small amount of neurons, because I couldn't replicate it. So now I use, and now in this spot right now that I actually like there's something is the ones that it's now online. I'm doing a lot of things over there with the same mixture. So now there is much more neurons over there. So I reduced, I manually, I intentionally reduced conductivity significantly. I've added like oil, like paint oil, and in good amount. I've added I've added salt, which actually a small amount of salt in water when it's like actually like solved in water does not reduce conductivity. Actually, it increases conductivity. But if you put like a good amount, very good amount, it doesn't increase conductivity. And also all sort of like also like some other stuff that I've just inserted into that because I wanted to be less conductive, because I wanted to avoid like what you've just seen. The burning, and I keep it connected for typically 4 hours, and I cannot you've seen it. Very quickly it started to burn. So I cannot like connect such. I wanted to work for hours, and so the amount of neurons that you have is also it's affected, but and it's also and there's also the question of what exactly do you want to actually create. Like this also affects like what mixture do you actually want. And I would say that the fact that we see the creation of neurons and also the creation of worms in that it takes place like inside the turbulence that is like typical to liquid that is that is exposed to electrolysis. Doesn't mean that we would actually need this turbulence or this foam, because maybe we do, maybe we don't. But this turbulence or this like foam is created by a chemical process in which the liquids are separated to other it's separated to molecules or elements with the help because of the electricity. And I'm not certain at all that this process is, and also heat is generated in this process. And I'm not certain at all that any of this is actually like useful from like the point of view of the neurons. It might all be just byproduct. I mean, they don't. Maybe they don't need the heat at all. Maybe they do, but maybe they don't. And maybe they don't need the liquid or any material to be separated to elements. Maybe it's just for them. Just a byproduct that is just limiting them because it creates like all sorts of like mechanical energy and heat energy that might, that certainly from some level hinders them and can even kill it, and it blocks the view. For the symbols, and it was demonstrated that they don't work. They don't have they cannot view the symbols above them. It was demonstrated many times. They need to see it. Even if they know it's there, it's not enough. They need to actually raise their hypothetical head and actually be able to watch it, because that's the way it is. So, and presumably it's good that it's like that, because otherwise, it means that they will do whatever they want. So maybe we should be grateful of for these limitations, because otherwise, they can do whatever. It means that they do whatever they want. If I start when you say that if I say that I prefer that they just get me or understand me in some kind of a magical way and do whatever I presumably want, according to their interpretation, it's just like say, okay, do whatever you want, and maybe it's good, but I don't know, maybe it's for the best. Who knows? Maybe the hypothetical option in which they get complete freedom to do whatever they want in Earth is not that bad one. As I said, I almost certain that they will change that they will multiply significantly, and they will then change the Earth. And I will be very surprised if this change will be aligned with the interest of the current dominant species that occupies Earth. But since the said species is disgusting, I don't really care. But it's not the way that God created them. It's they don't they do walk independently, but they don't they do modest things, they don't go over the top when they walk in the idle mode is pretty much gardening mode and art mode. They create art and representation of microscopic animals, and also presumably atomic phenomenon or subatomic phenomenon, and also they do landscaping, all of which are pretty much not harmful, I would say. So where were we? So the separation of a liquid to element and the heat, and this all might be just byproducts of electrolysis that are totally not required. Maybe what's all the only thing that is required is electrical current to flow through them. So they will have they will have a power source, and they will work. They will use the power to like any component, like a light bulb, or anything that you connect to the socket. With the only difference, which when there are very good there are very good reasons to suspect that they are superconductors, as opposed to normal, I would say, electric components. Superconductors are are known to humans I think more than 100 years. It's not something new, but they only work when they are in freezing temperature, really cold temperature, very, very cold. Extremely cold. And there is no known, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that there is no room temperature superconductor that is known to humanity. And there's a good chance that these neurons are just that. And it should be said, for some viewers it might be obvious, but it should be said for the general audience that room temperature superconductors, if such things exist and could be obtained, they worth tons of money. It can because it has amazing these things that are not known to exist at all, but if they do exist, they have tons of very, very incredible things that you can do. They can utilize very greatly. In all sorts of in industries, and so it's just another just another like aspect of why these like nanobots are presumably like incredibly valuable. I should say that the issue with superconductivity, I mean, there are many issues with superconductivity, but I mean, what's important for our purpose is that the fact that that they do not generate heat when they work, which is not true to anything to anything but superconductors that is working on the electricity produces heat, and sometimes it's like a small problem, and sometimes it's a very big problem, and it depends on what you actually want to do. But there are good reasons to think that, and to suspect that they do not generate any heat at all. Just for the fact that if they do, they would burn because they do so much work in comparison to their size. They do amazing stuff with comparison to their size, and this was demonstrated many times, like both in the microscopic scale and in the non-microscopic scale. Now, I should also add another. Now, so regarding the material, like what materials. So presumably, I mean, the best material for electrolysis, the mixture should be a material that will allow the neurons to create like chains of conductivity inside it, but it will not be too conductive in itself, because if it's too conductive, they can't. I mean, there is no way that they can stop the conductivity. They cannot. I mean, tell the electrons don't flow or something like that. I mean, if the neurons, I mean, they are located inside the conductive material, and I mean, and like electrical current flows through it, then I mean, it. And the mixture is not superconductive, which cannot be the case, because no room temperature superconductor is even known to humans. So how could it be? Then I mean, for sample heat for certain you can say that heat will be generated, as you can see that it's generated, and if a lot of I mean, this is correlated with the amount of electricity that is. So if it's too hot, then I mean, you start to see the steam and ash, and eventually everything just burns, and this happens quite a lot. It's not. I mean, it's very easy for that to actually to happen. Especially if we deal with small amount of material. But if we use a large amount of materials, then I mean nothing happens, because I mean you need I mean. No flow is passed, because you need. I mean, there is no current, electrical current, because you need, for large amount of material. I mean, there is like a ton of resistance, and then you will need, but presumably you will need like a huge power source. Like I mean, it's very high volts, which I don't have. So it's a balancing game, and it's not, and it's even a changing balancing game, because the mixture changes, because although I mean the metals are eroded, so I mean there are more metal particles in the mixture, and also the neurons themselves, they change the equation. Now there is also the question of what actually you want to produce. So my first thought on the matter was that if they can create worms in a specific liquid that I generate, that is mostly contain my pee, my semen, and hydrogen peroxide and iodine solution, I thought, okay, worms are incredibly, complicated, so they can create anything, inside it. But this is wrong, both from experimental perspective and also from theoretical perspective, because who said that worms are that complicated? You can say, okay, worms are extremely complicated because these are robots, they are living robots, they are amazing. So yeah, this is correct. But think of worms as you know them, like worms, just biological worms. What do we need in order to create a worm? You only need two worms to fuck each other, and even not that, because many worms, they don't even need they just do it with themselves. They just masturbate, and then another worm is created. Maybe it was a colorful description, and the biologists will not concur, but something like that. You don't need, mostly you don't need more than a worm to create another worm. And it's not so. On the one hand, it's biological. So everything that is biological is incredible because it's incredibly sophisticated. But it doesn't mean that you actually need, from the perspective of the neurons, to work very hard in order to create it. Perhaps for them, it's very easy to create worms because they don't have problem with with work that is done in a very like very small scale, even if it's very exquisite. Perhaps they don't have problem with it. Perhaps they can like work in them in like with subparticles, like atomic subparticles. It sounds like amazing, but we have good reason to believe that they can actually like observe subatomic phenomena, and maybe they can also manipulate it. So if they have the ability to actually manipulate very, very small things, then from their perspective, worms are not that it's not terribly complicated. They only need to know how to do it, and they know because they have the like shared memory, they have collective memory, which is incredibly sophisticated, and they have the ability to create very small stuff. So other than that, they just need the material, and probably, I mean, not that complicated material is needed. Perhaps like the things that are in my pee, and like iodine, and a little bit of scraps of metal or plastic, or just very, very trivial, like a small amount of material is needed to create a worm, because it's I mean, because it's not made of like of matter that is like hard, like, I mean, like for example, rings. Perhaps for them to something that I try to do a lot, and I only mention it in very, very small scale, like to create like gold rings with diamonds, and because I always try to do it, as you know. I'm constantly, and I'm making like advancement with it, but I still haven't done it. Like, I mean, like I haven't like prepared the real one that I can give to my daughters to actually put on their finger. It will be amazing when I'll be able to do it. But perhaps from the point of view of the nanobots, to actually create like a golden ring with a diamond is incredibly more difficult than to create a worm. Even if for humans a worm is much more complicated than a diamond ring, because maybe for the Neos, I mean, they need to think like, how do I even get the gold? Like, you didn't like give me gold, so where should I get the gold from? Like, I need to create the gold. Maybe they can create gold from other materials, but this requires a ton of energy. So where I mean, they need the energy. They presumably need the energy from somewhere. Now for the diamond, maybe, I mean, from material perspective, it's simpler, because diamonds are all they are made from carbon, and carbon is widely available. But then again, you need to change the molecule. I mean, not every carbon is the same. I mean, diamond is not the same as like as sugar. Yeah, I mean, so, and they are not priced the same. So, I mean, yeah, what I think is like intuitively is simple might or complicated might not be for them. Maybe for them, like to create like a small like life form like a worm is very simple, but to create something like a ring with diamond is complicated. Not because they don't know how, but because they need to change matter, like and which is, or to get their hands on matter that is not available to them, or that in order for it to be available, a ton of energy is needed, and they cannot like invent energy from nowhere. I mean, this conclusion, which is pretty straightforward, but I mean, it was already I mean, it was demonstrated like very quickly with everything that they do with them, that they need energy. And like, I mean, that they actually, I mean, that they cannot work without, I mean, it's obvious, but I mean, it should be said, because I mean, you could say maybe they are like little gods that, I mean, they create, I mean, energy out of nowhere, or that they get it from another dimension. Like I mentioned, like the novel, like Isaac Asimov novel, the gods themselves, that, I mean, is dealt with. I mean, part of it is dealing with, I mean, it's like two universes, like the universe of the humans and the universe of the aliens. And the universe, actually, they have like, I mean, the relations between the four forces, like presumably, you don't know even if it's true, but according to standard model, which is probably not true at all, but anyway, according to the model, like there is like four forces, like in the universe, like the gravity, electromagnetic force, strong atomic force, and the weak atomic force. And this it's and the whole universe, the properties of the universe, presumably they rely on the property, I mean, the relations, like between, I mean, like the proportions of these forces. Like, I mean, like gravity is very, very weak. I mean, if it wasn't that weak, I mean, everything was I mean, was just, I mean, lumped together. I mean, so it must be like relatively weak to other forces, like to electromagnetic forces, for example. So I mean, presumably their universe, I mean, it also it follows those four forces, but with different proportions. So it's impossible. I mean, it's even theoretically impossible that for something to exist in the other universe to be actually passed to our universe. I mean, it's theoretically impossible because I mean, everything that exists, every matter that exists in this universe, I mean, cannot exist in the other universe. But then I mean, humans found a way to actually but you can pass information somehow, and so they say, oh hi, like initially everything is just kind of friendly because I mean they cannot threat each other. I mean because it's like different universe, so they can do much more than email. So that's what they do. But then I mean somehow they decipher the language, so they chat and like. But then I mean humans find a way to actually to leech energy from the other universe, like to take energy from the other universe, which is quite funny. I mean how disgusting can you be? Like it's like like could you metaphorically connect like your your car but to another universe and to take like energy from it. And I've said car and you think about like other things. I meant like your real car, not whatever. You always need to think about like the metaphorical language of these idiots. Anyway, so I mean, no, they don't do that. I mean, the Neros actually need energy. They cannot leech energy from other universes. They only have like energy that they can get from this universe. So they need energy. Otherwise, they can't walk. I mean, they can walk, but very slowly. Very, very slowly. But if they have energy, they walk much quicker. This was demonstrated many times. So they need the energy. That's why the fact that the liquid that I used initially was very successful in creating worms doesn't mean that all that it's actually like it's great for other stuff and more complicated stuff. It doesn't mean it at all. And even worms were actually created not only on liquids but also in very thick material. I mean the only thing that is actually good with the liquid that is mostly contained by clean semen and hydrogen peroxide, which is mostly water, is the fact that it's very conductive, so it's very easy with any kind of transformer to actually create like electrolysis chamber with it. But other than that, it's not that like successful for any other purpose. Okay, so I will stop now, but we'll have another talk because it's almost an hour, because I haven't spoken about a very important related issue, which is the issue of fuels, and I want to touch that subject, like the news and fuel. I'll do it a little bit later, the fourth installment.